Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the wonderful Feroze Gujral, who's going to tell us a little bit about herself, her projects. Feroz is a philanthropist and art aficionado, a businesswoman, a patron of the arts, a columnist, and a media personality. She is the founder and director of the Gujral Foundation, a nonprofit trust set up in 2008, along with her husband, Mohit Gujral, who is the son of the renowned Indian modernist Satish Gujral. She is also the founder director of Outset India, the Indian chapter of Outset Contemporary Art Fund, which is the largest acquisition art fund in the world, present in 9 countries, established in 2011. And Feroz is regarded as one of India's leading art patrons. She is currently on the trustee board of the Kochi Biennale, of which she is a founding patron. She was previously on the international board of the Guggenheim Museum in New York, the Serpentine Gallery in London, and the advisory board of IGNCA New Delhi. The Gujral Foundation has been steadfast in their dedication to supporting Indian art, design, and culture, both locally and globally. And we're going to ask Feroz about some of the projects that they've taken on in the past and also their future ventures, which is really exciting. Key projects include My East is Your West, a collateral event at the 56th Venice Biennale, curated by Feroz and produced and presented by the foundation, as well as commission projects for the 11th Shanghai Biennale and the 8th Biennale, and the Kochi-Muziris Biennale, amongst others. They've also supported numerous projects by other organizations, including the V.S. Gaitonde exhibition at the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and Forgotten Masters Indian Painting for the East India Company, which was held at the Wallace Collection in the UK, and which I was lucky enough to see, and I absolutely adored that exhibition. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. So Feroz, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, Zahra. That was a very glamorous introduction.
Well, you a glamorous personality. You deserve an introduction like that. So I wanted to sort of get right to the crux of things. I mean, you've been involved in so many important ventures. You're involved in so many future projects, current projects. I really wanted to talk about each of those as well as focus on, of course, the foundation, because I think that really is such an important venture that you've taken on and supported. But before we kind of get going on those, I wanted to ask you about how you're taking this current time. From the sounds of it, you've been traveling a great deal. But I feel a lot of people talk about how it's a time to reassess and reevaluate where we are currently. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. You could chat a little bit about how you've been keeping, what your thought process has been recently.
And, an interesting time, because usually we are heavily programmed for at least 18 months in advance, and that's been kind of brushed aside. I'm usually on a plane at least for half the year, or if not more. That's been a relief. It's been just, a restful time. But more importantly, I've actually got a time to learn, and it's been tremendous amount of just, doing a few classes, talking to people, spending time thinking of new projects, and actually how does one go forward. And some of the most interesting things have actually come out of conversations between Mohit and me, because he's an architect, he's a real estate developer. So the ideas of public space, and I've been hankering for public space for the arts for many, many years, and it's been this whole new conversations of suddenly public space being more important than perhaps building a building in the future, and confidence giving places. And that's a strange thing. Like, can we look at public place as something that gives you confidence, and not just a place to park your car or to just get out and be in transit. Also reuse the public space, and can we multi-use like a parking lot? Can it become a late night dining? Can it become a really cool festival space at night? Can it have light kind of structures that light up, and so it becomes an installation without disturbing the daily kind of use of the space? So it's stuff like that for me, which has been really interesting, and a lot of amazing people I've got to listen to, thanks to our Divvy and you and other platforms. So it's been restful, as well as very, very, for me, profoundly a learning moment after a very long time.
Well, it sounds as though you never rest, actually. But this
Right.
is true, and it's interesting to think about how even the arts, how design can be used to reimagine public spaces. I mean, how outdoor cinemas are popping up, for example. And I think that's something, things that we had left behind, in a sense, are now coming back because we're understanding the importance, perhaps, of them, the importance of
I
having
think
community building and yet separation.
it's true. I think this idea of social distancing may not go away for a long time.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I've been watching it for different reasons. You see it all over the Far East. You see it all over, Thailand years ago used to wear masks for pollution, or China, the Chinese or Japanese are always wearing, Koreans are always wearing masks. So, I mean, it's become a way of life for them for a different reason. But here now, people are getting a little more comfortable with it. It'll take time. But the uncanny thing is what's really going to happen in the end. But it is a fantastic opportunity for design because suddenly there's these new reasons to design. And I think the new reason that people are designing for, there's an architect friend of ours, Suchi Reddy in New York, and she's designing spaces for meditation and Zen spaces, a space of spirituality in your daily life. Now, in India, we always had that little mandir space. How many of us do that anymore? A
Yeah.
space where you just, for one moment, for 5 minutes, sat down, concentrated in a beautiful aesthetic environment with all your senses, with a little bit of music, little bit of the murti, and, the incense and all those things. Now we're kind of going back to something even as simple as that, right? Um, so it's a moment in time, and it's a very exciting moment also to actually have new conversations about perhaps an old, forgotten theme, like you're saying.
Exactly. That's absolutely true. And now tell me about how is the Gujral Foundation considering all of this? Now you are already, and sort of before we talk about that, maybe we should rewind a little bit and chat about how the Gujral Foundation was sort of set up. How did you even think of an idea of setting up an art foundation?
I think Mohit and me have been giving for a long while, so it was really an extension of the giving. It wasn't isolated. So we didn't just come upon it and say, okay, now we're going to start an art foundation. We've been
Hmm.
giving a long while to World Wildlife, to Elephant, to malnutrition, to the girl child, India, all our countries, in South Asia, we need all this support. So it was a lot of that, but I think also coming closer to the bone of what it is that how can we give back? And everybody was in the arts. My daughter's an artist, my husband's an architect, his sisters are jewelry designers, interior designers, my mother-in-law's a ceramist, father-in-law an artist. So it was really to say it's the arts that has given us all this, and can we do something to give back? And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of looked at all our funding and said we must be able to take out some amount and say this is for the arts. And that's really been kind of where it came from. So inspiration from the family.
How fantastic. And I know that you and your father-in-law were very, very close. And I know very tragically and sadly he passed away earlier this year. Was he very proud of the foundation and was he quite involved in its setup?
No, not involved at all. This is just Mohit and me. But I think
Yeah.
he was very progressive. I mean, at 90, he had an iPad. He was, on the ball for everything. He knew all the news. He knew all the artists. He knew what they were doing. He was very keen on our international projects. He would always ask for the catalogs, the books. So I think he was very, I don't know if I can say he was proud or not, but I think he was very intrigued and supportive, hugely supportive, to us doing things in the arts. I think to him it meant something that even though we were not artists, there would be some continuation of the name and all that he had worked for. So yes,
That's a very special feeling.
it is.
And in terms of the foundation itself, so you have two physical spaces in Delhi, is that correct? I know that one is 24 Jorbagh and then there's also Studio G Spot.
That used to be our office, which was also a space, but that's gone now, unfortunately. But hopefully when we come out of this, we open a new spot, which will be
Okay,
exciting.
that will
Um,
be exciting.
so we try to not really be confined. We have one permanent space or semi-permanent
Hmm.
space, Jorbagh. But everything else, we kind of try and be a little more innovative and a little different. So this year, for example, we did a pavilion project in the Sundar Nursery. So it's a huge garden, beautiful new space, newly designed in the last few years by the Aga Khan Foundation. And Ratish Nanda, who runs it, extraordinarily open-minded, very inclusive, and we've had a great time doing this incredible project by Ankon Mitra, and that was a pavilion project for public space. So we try and push to get new spaces, you know, as much as possible, and also help with space for the arts.
That's very good. And it gives you more flexibility as well with your projects. And it also keeps the public engaged in different ways. And I know that you curated, for example, Property of the Gentleman in Bikaner House, which
Yes,
was a fantastic stamp collection of the Hyderabadi Nizam, no?
that's right. So
How did that come about?
that was actually a secret birthday present for my brother on his 50th birthday.
Really?
The collection is his. He has a few million stamps, and he has the whole Hyderabad collection for my grandfather. So actually, that
Wow.
very sort of, it wasn't designed as a project for contemporary art, but it was our most successful project, and it really gave me this idea that what is really important and what do people look for, and everybody connected with that project. There were children, there were elderly people, there were people who'd been in the postal service, there were authors, there were writers, it was so sweet. So it really made us think that we have to rethink what we think of as a contemporary idea, and what do people want to really see. You know, we may not always be on the ball with like a very high contemporary idea. So it's definitely brought us to thinking, what do we do next, and how do we incorporate like Indian craft, Indian old stories of design, because this was a design show. It was really talking about the power of design of this 2x2 piece of paper, you know. Yeah, it was a big surprise.
That's very true. And I suppose it is important to cater exhibitions towards different publics in a sense.
Correct.
Do you remember was there a particular stamp that stayed with you, or a particular piece of the collection or story?
Yes, there's the Black Penny, which is a very famous stamp. It's worth an absolute fortune now. So I think I'm going to thieve that away from my brother when he's not looking. But more than that, it connected me back to Hyderabad, and this idea of where do we come from. You know, we've forgotten that in this rush and hustle bustle. I don't really always think about that, you know, what happened to the grandparents, what were their stories, where are we now? Have I transferred that information to the next generation? Have I shared this with my children? And sadly, not as much as I think I should. So it was an eye-opener in that sense.
And Feroz, that also draws into the philosophy of the Gujral Foundation, no? Because I remember reading about how you spoke about sort of India for India in a sense. Is that right?
I definitely have a strong sense of, post-independence. We have not built the kind of infrastructure that the South Asia really needed. Yes, we're a very old civilization, and we forget we're a very young country. But I think 70 years may not be enough to build great institutions for like the arts. Maybe we're just struggling with all our other problems, which are very, very, very pressing and important. But I think it's also a moment to, maybe we've missed that moment. So how do we redo and think of new ways to look at infrastructure? And without that, there's always the magic of what next and how do we do that. But this lack of infrastructure is really the core to that, to answer that, you know, in some way.
That's very, very true. Now tell me, I know that you've also been branching out of like India itself and supporting international exhibitions, like for example, the Guy
Yes.
Fawkes Show in New York, or the Wallace Collection exhibition in London, which was looking at these fantastic prints and paintings from various albums from the company school, etc. Now, there's also been the London Design Biennale, India Pavilion, and Columbus Scope. I mean, really, the list goes on and on of projects that you've either commissioned directly or projects that you have supported. Why
Yes.
did you feel the need to branch out like this? And where did that stem from?
I think it wasn't a branching out. It's really, we're sticking very much to our core that India is, or South Asia is, because I don't see us as really different, whether it's Pakistan or Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. For me, we're the same people, so that's important. But I think this idea that we are not showcased enough. We are not curated into all these spaces. Unless you have an Asian curator or a South Asian curator, we are not included in those collections. We are not included in that conversation. And I feel with 1/3 of the world missing from the conversation is a bit strange to me. So how do you remove 2 billion people from your conversation? 2 billion people with an ancient and important civilization, very influential civilization across the world. So how is that, how are we missing? So that was my first instinct, that why are we missing? And then you realize because of the lack of institution, and therefore the lack of kind of studies, and the lack of schools, and the lack of art history courses, and courses to how do you be a curator, and how do you buy and sell art, and all these things are missing. Missing in a packaged Western contemporary way, which is the language of the day. Not missing in practice, because it all exists. And I felt that it was time to make that bridge and say, we have all these things. What are we doing about it? And I hate to say it, but the West is already really good at it. These institutions are world class. So my point was to learn through that, actually align with them, learn through them, make the connections, get them to showcase, and maybe bring some of those practices back to India. And I hope over these last 10, 12 years, we've been able to do a little bit of that.
Have you seen the conversation shift in the last 10 or 12 years since you started doing this?
Definitely. India is very much on everybody's agenda. We are recognized now globally as for our technology, for incredible leadership. Most companies across the board have a top level Indian person in their corporation. A lot of the Indian artists are very well recognized in these big institutions now. The Tate, for example, is collecting very seriously. A lot of them are adding to their collections what they feel they've missed. And the kind of work coming out of South Asia now is fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. I'm just jealous. I can't always have a lot of the work I promote, a lot of the art I promote, but it's really something. The conversation, the concepts are superb, and they are. In fact, I feel we will lead at some point. Because there is this whole directional shift to the ancients. Everybody's going back to where the wisdom comes from, and we can't be ignored in that space.
So, no, you're completely right. And I think it's important to have regional South Asian institutions and foundations that are really taking this conversation forward. I mean, you did that as well in 2015 with the Pavilion at Venice, which essentially was both Pakistan and India. It was a great time to do so. And I think it was such an important message to put across about the shared history. How did you think of that idea? How did it come to you?
I think it really came from Mr. Okui, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he was just he loved India. He was familiar with the artists. He was familiar with India. And when I met him, I did say, I have a tiny idea, and what do you think? And he was going to be curator. And I have to say, he said, don't say it's a tiny idea and stop thinking. And I remember thinking, that's ridiculous. I have to say it's a tiny idea and I have to start thinking. But he was just a force in just giving me a little bit of confidence to say, just do it. And I think it sat very well in the curation itself. And I think both Rashid Rana and Shilpa Gupta did the most incredible, very sensitive, very emotional kind of offering, which touched people. And I think that is really the key to all great art, that you come to something and you remember, it touches you. A great piece of poetry, a great piece of music, it means nothing if you are not touched. It means nothing if you don't think, oh my God, my mother would love this, or I have to send it to, a boyfriend, or send it to a husband, or send it to a child, And I think that was the key. And it had a very lyrical, beautiful love title, which I stole from Shilpa's work. So I think the title, My East is Your West, was a love title. And it resonated with everybody in the world, where we had all these border issues, all these terrorism issues, and we had a lot of foreigners who didn't speak English, didn't know what we were doing, didn't know where India was, who just come in and say, I love this exhibition. It's like, it makes me feel something. And that to me was the real success of that. But the idea was very simple, just how could I do something where we talk about borders, because that was essentially his curatorial note, was about one world, and how do we get all of us to be one world. So that worked,
And it's
thank God.
interesting, exactly. And it's interesting how even today, I mean, borders are the topic on everyone's mind.
It's
Now
true.
because of Corona, because of this pandemic, we are all being separated in ways.
That's true.
Brexit happened, which tried to separate us further. And I think borders are such a fluid
Well,
concept
I don't know.
in
They're
many
fluid
ways.
in one level and then they're very firm in another. Because all
Exactly.
this nationalism we're seeing right now, all these governments, it's changing because there's no patriotism, and that's what we really need. We need patriotism, but we've got this extreme nationalism happening, which is again
Exactly.
redefining borders in different levels, and it's strange in the time of the internet and this extraordinary access and globalization. We're being pushed back. Yeah.
And it's true, you also did this exhibition at a time when relationships between South Asian countries were at their, were doing very well. And I think it's something to celebrate as opposed to how, things sort of deteriorated over time
Yeah,
later.
I feel it's, as we all know, largely political. I don't want to comment on that, but I do want to say as
Mm,
people, I feel there's so many larger issues, in life. And I think divisive politics is not one of them. Do we really need this? I don't think so. Yeah.
no, you're completely right. And tell me, Feroz, what has been an exhibition that the foundation put up, either in India or abroad, that really stayed with you? What were you sort of
Uh,
perhaps proudest of?
I don't think I have one because different things
Yeah.
have different problems, and they're like children. You work with them for so long, work with them for a year, 2 years, 5 years. So I think there are a lot of interesting ones. I mean, Shanghai was interesting for the location. We didn't easily find a good spot within the Shanghai Biennale, which is this extraordinarily large power station. But
Okay.
the artist Vishal Dar, noticed this huge chimney at the back, and he said, "Mine is a light work, and I would love this chimney." And it was extraordinary because that chimney you can see from all over Shanghai. You see this chimney with this temperature of Shanghai, and that's what he picked. So the location was for me like that was exciting. That was super
Hmm.
exciting. And he did a beautiful, beautiful project there. Or us supporting the first Columbus Scope because that was a hard time, and to support something a very small but very potent initiative, I thought it was important. And so supporting that was really close to my heart because they were trying, and I thought this is important. So was it a spectacular, glamorous thing? No, it was just a tiny thing but important. So it depends, it varies.
It varies. Oh, that makes sense. Tell me, what is next on the cards for the next sort of 5 to 10 years? You've already been around for 12 years, which is a really big deal.
A
So
long
perhaps
time.
the next dozen, yeah, exactly. And the next dozen years, how do you see that
Um,
moving forward?
I think it's a mixture of things. I'm one of the conversations is what next is really about the world, and
Hmm.
I do think some of our resources we must redirect to. I'm going to use a very big word, but it doesn't mean we have to do a very big thing. We could do a small thing, but it's really we have to address climate change. I can't live this time and have some funds and say it's not going to some sort of sustainability, some sort of direction of organic something,
Hmm.
using technology to say, can we work better for elephants? The Asian elephant is dying. Can we do a little more for water, a little more for the rivers, a little more for something? I can't remain in this realm of art and culture, which is definitely, I mean, we have to support that. There's no question because there are people behind it. There are people and practices behind it which we can't allow to go missing. But at the same time, we can't ignore seriously global issues, serious issues that my children will live through. So I would like to say that we would like to put some effort towards that. And it may still have an artistic kind of envelope, but I think those are important. Just saving some of the crafts in India. This pandemic is going to kill another layer of craftsmen and skill sets and funding and just breathing space. And I think one has to look at it a little bit differently. I like to look at it a little bit from the grassroots level up and not just at the top level. So that's a big change. And going back to people, I think we need to look at more than the arts as a whole, as a colder view. We need to change and say, okay, this person may not be the most coolest contemporary artist, but what is he really doing? Is he really sustaining some sort of art form we need to just support? And that doesn't mean it's a big exhibition, but we need to support that, you know. So those
And
kind of
have you
thoughts.
been doing that in the past? Have you been looking at sort of the crafts of India?
Small. We have definitely. We're looking at a big Pulkari exhibition, for example, but we are turning the conversation into a contemporary one. So for me, it's a very refined, ancient art of tapestry weaving, of community building, of you know, of building, of keeping this handwork going. But at the same time, I feel it's a very minimalist art form. It's a very minimalist, it's very beautiful. It comes from Central Asia and maybe even beyond. So I'm thinking of re-looking at things like that, which we traditionally don't look at, you know? And we think, oh, that's just a Pulkari shawl. I mean, so what? Like, so I think there's a lot of this kind of reinterpretation, which I'd like to look at, to kind of draw these kind of things back into the conversation, but maybe with a new eye. I don't want to change them. I just want to enhance, and maybe that'll work. I don't know.
And support them as well, you know, like
Yeah.
sort of support them maybe through funding, support them through buyers as well, because you want to keep their
Also,
traditional craft and the way that they work alive.
also just turning an eye towards it and saying this exists. Even just a little bit of that has resonance. You know, somebody will pick it up, somebody in textile, somebody in that area, I hope will then augment, you know. Yeah, it's all hard
Well,
work.
certainly. A lot
Amazing.
of hard work.
Yeah, but it's always amazing.
Shall we turn our eye towards another organization and another venture that you've also been a part of, the Kochi-Muziris Biennale? Now,
Yes.
that also has been around since, I believe, 2012. And I wanted to just ask how that came about. Were you involved from the very get-go?
Basically, Riaz Kumu and both started this. It was two artists, local artists, who felt that we need to do something for the region. And I think that was spectacular. I mean, they just had a dream, they got up and they started. And I think a lot of us hesitate to do anything, big or small, by saying, oh, I don't have all the pieces, you know, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I should. And I think that this tremendous dream, they started, and they approached me with the venue, you know, so they were keen to have a venue which Mohit's company had in this area, and we were very lucky that he got DLF, who's the company that actually owns the property now, said yes, and it's a beautiful venue, and it really made this Biennale special. So I think for me, and I'm also from Kerala, so that my father's from Kerala, so I have like a personal feeling. So every time we, 3 or 4 of us Keralites get together, we try and do something. So I really felt for that project, and I felt that I am also from here. It's a bit like the stamp exhibition. It was like, oh my God, my dad's from Kerala. How much time do we spend here? What do we really give back? When did I last come here? You know, why don't we do this? And it has been just amazing. From the first edition onwards, it's a labor of love. I mean, it's super hard, but it is extraordinary. And anybody who's visited Kochi has said that. I mean, it's the location is extraordinary. Being in Kerala is extraordinary. And then to have this incredible pan-Indian and an international canvas is it's something else. Have you been? You have to come. Everybody.
You know, I haven't been. My sister's been, but I haven't been yet. And I think she's been twice, and I'm quite jealous about that, actually.
No,
and I was planning to go. I know, I've heard that. I've heard that it's absolutely spectacular. And it's pretty amazing how, you know, 2 artists, not curators, not a foundation, not art critics, they kind of got together and said, you know what, we're going to start this. And in the span of barely, I think, 8 years, they've actually changed the regional art scene.
Yeah. I think what's wonderful about this and unique about this, of course, is that because the first one, Bose curated the first one, that he or Riaz and him actually decided that they will be artist curators. And that is hard. It's not easy, but it just brings a completely different viewpoint. And it's hard technically and, you know, structurally and infrastructurally, and also just in the workings of it, you need kind of the working arms, which is fine. But when you have an artist, they bring their integrity to their practice, their purity of thought, their line of direction, and that makes it completely different to a curator who may be a collector of things and a curator of a great collection, you know. But this is very often singular in the eye, and that makes it completely different to every other biennale on the earth, and I like that. But everybody listening has to make it at least once to Kochi. It's worth it, more than
I
worth
think
it.
I think you're quite right. And do you think that they sort of achieved what they set out to achieve, or are they still things
Um,
that they wanted to manage that are still in the works?
No, of course, everything is work in progress, and working, as you know, in South Asia is not the easiest thing. It's everything is hard. Money is hard. One year we had a huge floods. This year we have
Mm,
coronavirus. We're still going ahead. We're still doing it because we feel that more than for just the art world, I think Kerala needs it. I think India needs it. We all need something uplifting after this. We all need something which is a destination. We all need something that also helps this huge artistic community. So we've decided to go ahead, and that's been, I would not say an easy decision, but I think the right decision. So I think, yeah, I'm excited this time to see how it works. Again, yeah, but all these things are hard. They're so mammoth in their
and I mean, you would know
output.
that because you've also done exhibitions in so many locations. Venice itself is not easy. I
No,
mean, that too was hit by floods,
very
and
expensive.
all
Yeah,
sorts of strange things happen at the last minute when you're working on such a, an organization and an event that's such a large scale.
that's true. I'm sure you felt that last time you did Venice. That wouldn't have been easy,
Yes.
but that was
No,
very,
and it's
very.
sort of part and parcel of it. You just assume that something will go wrong generally from the outset.
It's
And so when
exciting.
it does, you're
All
prepared.
To me it's the excitement, it's the possibility and the excitement, and learning. You see all these incredible foundations, organizations, galleries, people, critics, and I think if you don't put yourself out there, it's a bit like the Olympics. For me, it's the Olympics of the art world, and you can't live a lifetime and not try Venice. Either you have to go or you have to do a project. So either way,
Yeah.
it's worth it.
No, certainly. And I have to say, you are one of my inspirations and my mentors during that process, whether you know that or not.
Oh, I'm struggling with my hair. um
Don't worry about it. Firoz, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about something you touched upon very briefly, which is your philanthropic ventures. And
yeah.
I, for one, was not so aware of all that you have done separately from the arts,
Oh,
and it ranges from elephants and wildlife to TED Talks to all sorts of ventures. So I thought it would be great if you could perhaps speak about a couple of them that are really close to your heart.
I think I'm definitely one of those people who believes that I'm going to sleep when I'm dead. So till then, I'm awake doing something. Um, I think a lot of them is just evolving. I don't think I plan anything. I think it's an opportunity to me. The most important thing in life that defines you, that makes you completely different from everyone else, is really an opportunity. It's not talent, there's somebody more talented. It's not beauty, there's somebody more beautiful. It's not money, somebody has more money than you. So it's really the opportunity, and to me that is the most precious thing on earth. Because without that opportunity, you could be the bestest, biggest, you have nothing. So I kind of try and grab every opportunity that comes my way, and I try and make it work, and I try and at least explore, is this something worth doing? Now, very often one has to walk away, but every now and then one meets somebody, they're doing something, really working hard on it, and I feel really honored and lucky that I can support. And very often it's a very tiny thing. I mean, to give money is the tiniest thing, compared to actually standing there and doing, helping somebody, or standing in the bush and actually tracking elephant, or, saving rhinos, or whatever else is happening. So I think it's an honor and a privilege if you come close to any opportunity where you can actually help. And that's been a guiding light. But yeah, I've done a lot of things. I'm very curious, and I'm also a
Yeah.
bit crazy. So I don't see things as negative. I first go in like 100% positive and try and make it work. So yeah.
That's really good advice. I mean, both pieces of advice you just gave, one that you should grab every opportunity, and in many circumstances, you have to be the one to make that opportunity work out for you.
It's
It's
true.
not that an opportunity will
I
come
walk
knocking on
away.
your door.
Exactly. And you walk away, but I explore. If you say something to me today, I'm going to say, okay, why not? Let's try it. And then I listen carefully and ask 100 questions. And then I try and do my homework. And then I try and I ask a lot of advice, because I ask for a lot of things. Someone told me the other day, how do you do so much? I said, it's not a lot. I actually ask. People are not waiting for me and trying to find me and say, oh, here's a gift. I actually go out and ask. And a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, it's just a word. If somebody says no to me, it's a word. It was no before I asked. So it's what they ask. And 9 times out of 10, it's a maybe and then a yes. So I always ask. It costs
You're
me nothing.
right. I think that's also extremely important to remember because often we're shy about asking. We think, oh no, it'll probably be a no. So we completely kill our chances of anything happening before they've even begun.
That's true. But more than that, I think we start with the disadvantage of feeling we are not good enough and we don't have enough to offer. And I mean, the other day I met somebody and he lost his job and I said, how are you doing? And he said, I'm actually doing very well. And I said, I'm so sorry. And I didn't know him. I just met him like he's, at a cafe. And I said, what are you doing now? And he said, I am teaching running. And I'm like, what do you mean you teach running? And he's like, yeah, I'm a coach online for running. And he makes more money than he has in his old job than he is online coaching for running. So the world is changing so quickly. The language of business is changing so quickly. Technology is just, if you're a consultant or a coach, this is the moment, if you can share anything. So there are all these new opportunities. Even now, I'm really excited about the internet, and I don't even have Facebook or Instagram or anything, but which is why I'm on my foundation Instagram. But I am looking at like what is it that technology can do to explore how to do what we do better, how to do it to more people, how to reach more people. So there's always some opportunity, always.
And speaking of that, you also, in addition to everything else that you do, you also are the founder of the International Art Design Consultancy, FMG Advisors, right?
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to chat a little bit about that? I mean, I find it quite interesting the way that everything's coming together and merging under this design and technology umbrella. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that.
That studies is a very small company just to explore what we can do outside. And because we always had a design business and we always had an architecture design business, we felt that how can we actually, and because I'm in the arts, a lot of people would ask me for advice. Ask me for advice to get an interior going, an office space, artwork, to buy art, to collect. And that's a whole different conversation. But just how to do this. And I found that I was doing a lot of work for all of this without really getting paid for it. And then it was a lot of work from all my consultants and other people. So I started saying, okay, we're going to do this, not for a huge fee, but that money as well will go into the foundation. So it's a bit of a commercial, sustainable arm. But it's, again, super exciting because we're working in many countries and we work with many other kind of people. And it's not forefront of the arts, but we actually push a lot of Indian art and design into that space. So in that sense, there is a bit of a, give back quality to the arts and to design, to how do we explore that. So we have a program at CEPT University, which is design-based and architecture-based. And we find a lot of young talent there. So a lot of that talent, hopefully we can get them to a point where we can then produce their design and actually feed it into homes and offices and things like that.
Wonderful. That's really, really interesting. And Feroz, again, you kind of touched upon this, but you didn't talk too much about it. I wanted to ask you, what was in your personal collection? What is your collecting style? Do you prefer younger artists? Do you prefer more design-based work? What are you drawn towards?
I think my collecting is now, it used to be just at one point what we could afford. We started with just like, what can I afford, right? Then it shifted to what do I like? Then it kind of shifted to artists I work with and can I buy something from them? We as a foundation never take any art in lieu of the funding, ever. Okay. So we do buy from the artists we like. So that's one. But now I have a daughter who's an artist. She's finished from SAIC and she's definitely a guiding light. She's like, you have to change what you buy. You have to look at younger people. You have to look at people doing unusual things. You have to look at, stop going back to the masters, which are very expensive. And that same amount of money, you can support 10 younger artists who are
That's
excellent.
sort of my philosophy as well.
Yeah, so there's this big push coming from the other side, which is actually very nice because she informs me of completely different type of practices, you know. And we did Miami together this year, and that was another eye opener. I'm looking at one type of thing, and she's got like all this information, all this you know, these new ideas, and so I think our how we are buying is definitely changing. And of course, very, very, very blessed to have a large Satish Gujral collection, a lot, some of it gifted, a lot of it bought back because we had gaps in our collection, and Mohit and me 5 6 years ago said instead of buying other modernists and other things, let's complete our collection. And I have to say, I'm really proud to say we've gotten most of it now. So
That's wonderful.
inshallah, someday we will have a small Gujral museum so people can see his entire oeuvre of work and hopefully be inspired. Yeah.
That sounds really, really good. By the way, sorry to come back to your daughter, but it must be so nice to have her support and to have that additional person to bounce ideas off of when you know, expand the
That's it.
foundation
It's
even.
really fun, and it's nice for her to be a practitioner in America because I feel you know, she's studied, of course, the arts, so that brings a completely different line of inquiry and practice into this. But it also, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, she will actually be interested at some point to also be in the foundation. She is. She works with us on 3 4 projects a year in a different way, but it'd be nice
Oh,
at some point to know
fantastic.
I can leave this to somebody and someone will continue in the arts. That's a good feeling. That's a very good feeling.
That is really great. And especially for this upcoming museum idea that you're thinking about, what else is next for you generally? You know, in addition to the,
Well, COVID has thrown us off a bit, but
yeah,
we are very keen to do a big project, hopefully at the Architecture Biennale in Venice. You know, we've been
fantastic.
back, so I thought it would be 2022. Now it's going to be 2023. So a
Mm,
big, hopefully, fingers crossed, Architecture Biennale. We're looking at design very keenly. We're looking at textile. We're looking at costume, Indian male costume. That's exciting for me.
that's
Um,
very interesting.
how do we look at Indian male costume? How do we look at utensils and the design of utensils in South Asia? So from the very ancient to the very contemporary, who's practicing in this area? There are wonderful, wonderful people like Gunjan Gupta. There are people like Rashmi Varma, who wrote this incredible book on the utensils. There's, you know, Vikram Goel, who makes things. So there's so many people doing beautiful design objects, but it's not looked at perhaps in the right way to give them due credit. So I'm hoping
Mm,
that will be a big project. So there are these very quirky, different things, a little going backward to go forward, trying to learn from our stamp exhibition and say, there was so much interest in this little stamps. We don't even use stamps anymore, right? So it's all gone. So how do we pick on things that are interesting for the Indians and show their refinement over time and show how they've evolved in design and this contemporary world with the help of technology, with the help of, you know, printing 4D printing machines, you know, all these, with the help of all this, you know, incredible AutoCAD and all these kind of programs that make us do these three-dimensional superb things and imagine differently. So I'm very, very excited. Yeah.
this sounds fantastic.
Lot
I'm
of
so
work.
excited about it.
Lot of
How
work.
many shows do you generally do per year? You mentioned more than 3 or 4.
In a year, in a good year, 8. We try and do
Wow.
international project a year, and we try and do 3 or 4 at Jorbag, and then we try and support a couple, and then we work on a couple of others. So it's yeah, we've got like a small sculpture park idea which is happening at CEPT University, which is Mohit's
Hmm.
alma mater. It's the architecture school in India, and so we've got a 5 6 year program there. So that's you know, maybe not an exhibition in our space, but it is definitely for, you know, 4,000 kids who go to this incredible institution. So it's like different things. Yeah,
That's
push,
quite a
push,
lot
push,
to keep you busy. Yeah, exactly. Keep moving forward.
but
That's the way
never
to be,
bored.
I suppose.
Always busy, but never bored.
No, that's fantastic. I thought we could maybe open it up a little bit to questions and
Of
comments,
course.
and you and I can keep chatting throughout things. But I don't know if you've been noticing, but you can actually scroll through the comments, and I think your daughter has a couple of messages for you. So do check. Can you see them?
Yes, I can. She's a cutie. I'm glad she's watching because she's in Chicago, and
Oh, and the time difference is a little
the time
difficult, I
difference. No,
think.
but it's daytime, so that's okay. Yeah, I'm happy she's watching. Yeah.
Yeah, does
So I'd
anybody have
like to.
any questions for Feroz? So here's one. When you formulate an artwork, do you think of the outcome and its impact before, or is it something that comes in the post-working part of it? So I suppose you could consider that as an exhibition, perhaps, rather than an artwork.
Correct. I think for me, I really don't worry about the outcome. I think that's not my job. My job is really, uh, is there somebody who inspires me with their work? And sometimes it's really simple work. It's not like huge, flashy something. So I'm very rarely concerned of what anybody needs, unless of course we're going to the Biennale. It's a very particular curatorial line that we have to adhere to. So no,
Yes.
I just do whatever interests me because I find for a very long time I was the viewer. I was the person who wanted to go for to something, and I never found what I was looking for. And I think part of that was because I was brought up abroad. I studied, at boarding school in India, but I lived abroad my whole life. So for us to go to a great museum or see a great show, see a great artist, or to see a great performer was something we always did. So I never found what I was looking for, which is one of the big reasons why we started doing. We were not just supporting, but we started doing our own programming and creating our own exhibitions because so now I'm the curator, I'm the director. I work with a lot of very, very good curators. Natasha Jinwala is one of them. We work with, multitude of professionals in the arts. It's not like I'm doing everything, not at all. But I am definitely the concept curator. I think of an idea or I find somebody and I say, I want to do this. So I think it's really, I'm not worried about the outcome. I think it's the doing that interests me, and just the outcome is for the others. But it's also partly for me as the viewer and the kind of person who wants to see this happen in India.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Is there a project that you kind of were not able to do at the time? And now you look back and you think, you know what, I wish that I had done that, or I wish that I was involved in this particular scenario or segment of the world in a
Uh,
sense.
I think I have very bizarre wishes like that. I don't think they're simple ones.
Yeah.
Richard Armstrong, who's the director of the Guggenheim, is somebody who was a great mentor to me, especially during my East is Your West. He was one of my advisors for the project. He was amazing. He opened so many doors for me, and they were building, you know, they're looking at building the Guggenheim as they have in Bilbao and other places. And I said, I would really love for you to build a Guggenheim in India, an Indian Guggenheim. And short of selling my children and everything else, even then I won't be able to afford the brand. But it's the dream is like, I mean, there are Western institutions like the Louvre, the Guggenheim, but I would love to see somebody like that come to India. And, people often say, oh, why can't we build our own? Because they're the best. Why are you driving a Mercedes Benz? Why are you wearing a Piaget watch? Why are you wearing MAC makeup? God knows. You're buying the best. Why are you wearing Chanel perfume? So all of this is nonsense. They feel the art should somehow be grungy and we should manage. Why? Let's get the best. So I've got those kind of, yeah, I
Dream.
wish. My wishes
I
are a
think
bit
it's true.
extreme.
Dream big. No, but
Yeah.
dream big and it will happen.
So I wish for the great institutions, the great art institutions, great art educational institutions, to maybe have an India arm so that we can leapfrog. We don't have to evolve and struggle. We just get the best and follow and and participate as a partner.
I think that makes complete sense. Is there another career that you would have done if you were not going down the art and design route? Is there something really random like being an astronaut that you ever thought about doing?
Um, I would not put in fast tense because I get up and actually do all the things. I'm a doer, so I actually get
That's
up and do
true.
what I feel like doing. So I think one of the things is definitely to write. I write a lot, but I'm a closet writer. So I think At some point, I would like to get out of my closet and actually and do the writing.
You
Being
absolutely must.
Yeah, and being a filmmaker, I think I would like to make films. I think cinematographically, I think visually. So I think writing and making movies or making something. We don't have to make a movie anymore. We can make something online and still have it be seen, which is wonderful because it's not like, again, millions of dollars trying to make something big. You could just make a short film and it can be seen. So that's an
Feroz,
incredible.
what are you waiting for?
Oh Lord.
What is holding you back? Go for it.
I don't have the confidence for this. I'm waiting for a
No, you must.
moment. Yeah, it'll come. It'll come. It'll come.
It will indeed. Okay, here's another question. What's your take on various traditional Indian art forms like Pichpai, I can't say properly, Varli and Tanjoriyat and Buddhist art? Sorry if I butchered all the pronunciations of that.
Well, they are my gods. You know, all these Indian ancient art form are truly my gods because that's where every day I do homework, every day one researches, and every day one goes back to go forward. You know, we can't go forward if we don't know who we are, and that's my great sorrow is this massive loss in this segment. You know, this loss where we should have had museums for each one of these art forms. We should be the highest publishers of this. We should be, you know, the masters of a dissemination of all this knowledge, and we're not. You know, you see, yesterday I was Googling something and trying to find something about gardens because my next project is to do with gardens, and I was shocked. Every time I found an article, it's coming from the British Museum. It's coming from a very, very big scholar in the West because they have invested their time and effort to look at India and see this preciousness. And there is so little by the Indians, though they are really, really, really good scholars. I think a lot of it has to do with language. We are not translating enough to actually translate from Bengali and Tamil. And so I think the translation, we get lost in translation. Literally, we're losing in translation. And yeah, and I think these should be more in our curriculum of regular study. It should not be just the arts. You know, when you speak to an Italian or a Frenchman, any kid, even if they're doing something completely opposite, they know their history. They know their monuments. They know their, their art forms. They know their music. If you ask me today, I can, not me, but if you ask anybody, usually, they'll know 5 great composers from the West. They'll know 5 great, Oscar winners from the West. They'll know 5 great authors from the West. Because nobody is teaching us these things as our list. I don't know if I can name 5 great Indian authors who are not English writers, writing in English, you know? And that's
absolutely true.
Not right. So at some level, we have to fix this, you know? So yeah, those are the most important.
It's almost like this embarrassment of our own language that has still filtered through, perhaps as the remnants of colonialism, but it is something that we need to address and address quickly.
I don't feel it's an embarrassment. I just feel that in India particularly, we're too many countries in one. You know, we have so many different scripts. My parents don't share a script. Now, how difficult is that? That's hard. You know, they don't share a god, a language, the food, the rituals. So we're very different countries. So it's like saying a Russian, you expect to understand what the Spaniards are saying. So we are very wary, but I think we have to work harder because of that and make that effort. And the good thing about English is that it's the binder, you know. If you translate a work of art, a great work of art from Bengali to English, more and more of the world would read that. So I think it's the language is not a problem. I don't see English as a deterrent. It's binder in this day and age, you know. It's a lucky thing.
That's very true. Now we have about 1 minute and 20 seconds left. So I want to thank you properly, Feroz, for this wonderful conversation.
I've never said anything on Insta Live, so this is my first. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you did it with me.
With you. Yes. I'm happy to be here with you because I remember you from our meeting in Lahore before I did Venice. And
in London as well.
Yes, I'm so happy to see you going on to doing all these incredible projects. It's really heartening for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Feroz. And thank you everybody who came in to listen and to give us your time and your questions. I appreciate it so much. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Feroz, enjoy the rest of your time in London. When are you planning on heading home?
As soon as possible. It's been hard, as you know. This all of South Asia has an extreme problem, but hopefully soon. So, looking
Okay.
forward to going back home. Definitely some mango time. Yeah,
Yes. Oh, I've been eating so many mangoes. My God.
I'm
Anyway,
jealous.
thank you. Thank you again.